was it practically possible to keep everyone informed at the same time about developments in the case? These troubles were further aggravated by external factors. Seattle was a frightened, panicked city. Not every politician who spoke out at the time had the sense not to inflame those fears. Some segments of the news media clamored for information we could not divulge. And we all felt the stress of public pressure to apprehend Ted before he killed again. Little could we know that Bundy had driven on in his Volkswagen to Utah and was murdering there and in Colorado and Idaho, even before we had any good idea of how many women he might have murdered in our area. Then there were problems we had no way of anticipating. Among these was the sheer volume of information, some potentially vital, the rest mostly useless, all of it difficult to evaluate, that quickly overwhelms a serial murder investigation. Officers and detectives are individuals with individual ways of pursuing leads. Until we had developed standardized tip sheets, who, what, when, and where forms that could be compared, collated, and studied systematically, the information we collected was really just a blizzard of jotted notes, most of them unintelligible except to the person who wrote them. Another unwelcome surprise was how serial murders tend to invalidate certain basic assumptions of traditional homicide investigation. Specifically, there is usually a connection of some sort between victim and killer. They are often related or acquainted. Because of this, and because at first we could not assume that all or even any of Ted's victims were complete strangers to him, we were obliged to go by the book, investigating each victim's circle of contacts and who among them might have a reason for killing her. Although this work generated much information, it turned out to be only marginally useful. Similarly, and this problem was peculiar to Ted Bundy as a suspect, we discovered the uselessness of showing his photo to possible witnesses. Even without the disguises and masks Ted used, he looked different in just about every photo taken of him. The two we had seemed to be of two different people, neither of whom resembled the Ted at the lake. We learned lessons of a different type when it came to organizing ourselves into a multi-agency investigative task force. First of all, the formation of a task force represents a police consensus that there is indeed a serial killer on the loose. That can be an important psychological hurdle. Once everyone agrees on the nature of the problem, far less time will be wasted on extraneous investigation not germane to the task implicit in the term task force. A task force approach promotes better organization of case materials, too. And it absolutely forces a detective to think of what is important to the overall long-range mission rather than what seems important that day. Finally, the Bundy case demonstrated some intriguing apparent truths borne out in later serial murder investigations. We know, for example, that the actual killer is often apt to be among the first suspects known to the police. One important practical application of this knowledge is that when a detective reviews a difficult, long-term case, it is worthwhile to go back and look at what was done in the first few months. More than likely, the killer's name or a key clue to his identity will appear in those early files. Bundy's name was reported to us 3 times, once by one of his girlfriends. But we had 3,500 other suspects, too. Although by standard investigative procedures we eventually would have taken a long look at Ted Bundy, this process was speeded by the use of a computer. Today, computers are taken for granted across such a wide range of uses, including police work, that it is necessary to recall what a relative rarity they were in the mid-1970s. We in the King County Police Force didn't have one. But given the nature of our extraordinary problem with Ted, we saw that we needed to attempt extraordinary new measures if we were going to find him. It was in this context that we thought of the King County payroll computer, a huge and primitive machine by present standards, as a tool for digesting